OG, 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 come on, stay with me, OG. OG, stay with me. Stay with me, OG. Stay with me, OG. Come on, OG. Come on, OG. Come on, OG, stay with me.
What's up, everybody? This is Mr. 100K a day, and today with 100K Paralegal Services, we're going to be talking about one of the suspects, one of the defendants who were involved in the death of retired St. Louis Police Captain David Dorn in 2020. Now, just to give you guys a little background information, David Dorn was a police captain in St. Louis for years, I believe 20, 30 years. And he had been trying to guard a pawn shop in St. Louis in the civil unrest that occurred, the looting and all that occurred after George Floyd was killed. There was a lot of looting, there was a lot of shooting, there was a lot of negative things going on in the community. Now, the pawn shop was being looted. David Dorn tried to protect it because the pawn shop was owned by a friend of his. When he tried to protect it, one of the five young men who were subsequently charged in connection with this incident by the name of Stephan Cannon, he shot David Dorn. He shot him. He laid right there on the sidewalk. And this right here, this video here is the aftermath of what was taking place in the moments after Stephan Cannon had shot David Dorn. Take a listen.
OG, 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 come on, stay with me, OG. OG, stay with me. Stay with me, OG. Stay with me, OG. Come on, OG. Come on, OG. Come on, OG, stay with me. Come on, OG. Come on, OG. Come on, OG, stay with me. Come on, OG. Come on, OG. Come on, OG. Come on, OG. Damn, man, over some TVs, cuz. Over some TVs, man. For real. It's somebody granddaddy, cuz. Man, fuck you, nigga. What y'all trying to do? Fuck you talking about? Y'all kill this man over some TVs, cuz. Over some TVs, cuz. You hear me? That shit we could get, cuz. Over some TVs, cuz. Stop playing, man. OG, come on, OG. Come on, OG. Come on, this somebody granddaddy, cuz. Over some TVs. Call them, cuz. Over some TVs, cuz. Come on, cuz. Come on, man. We better than this, cuz. Over a TV, cuz. Over a TV, pop them, cuz. He gone, bro. He gone, bro. Over some TVs, cuz. OG, man, rest in peace, bro. It's nothing but love, bro. You good, bro. It's okay, bro. Just relax, bro. Relax, bro. Relax, bro. Over some TV, you was doing the right thing. You was doing the right thing. He was trying to protect it, but at the same time, it's the wrong. It's too much going on for that, OG. Come on, OG. We better than that, OG. I think he do work here, man. He work here, man. Over some fucking TVs, man. Over some TV. He lost his life over the TVs, cuz.
So this incident, garnered a lot of attention regionally and nationally because this all came about, this looting, this civil unrest, it all came about as a result of the incident with George Floyd losing his life at the hands of a white police officer. This was a major case throughout the St. Louis region. So, after the St. Louis police put out the surveillance video of the guys looting the pawn shop, and of course, just outside of the pawn shop is where the retired officer lost his life. People called in, people, worked to identify the perpetrators who were involved in this incident. Stephan Cannon, the one who was later convicted of shooting Mr. Dorn, was arrested and charged with murder. But they also charged another young man with murder. His name was Mark Jackson. Now, Mark Jackson was one of the guys who was inside of the store at the time of the incident. And Mark Jackson, had picked up and brought Mr. Cannon to Lee's pawn shop. As a matter of fact, after trial testimony came out, because Mark Jackson testified against him, he snitched on his boy. He was the one who called Cannon up and said, hey, let's go loot and tear some stuff up. and steal some stuff from these different stores. So after going from store to store, they end up, of course, down at Lee's Pawn and Jewelry. The store is getting robbed. Stephan Cannon is outside. He shoots and kills the officer, David Dorn, and they leave. After they left, of course, all the heat comes about, and he ends up getting arrested. Mr. Cannon gets arrested. Mark Jackson gets arrested because that was his vehicle. The Pontiac G6 that was seen on surveillance camera was his vehicle, and it was pretty easy to trace the vehicle back to its owner. So all the investigation comes about. Mr. Cannon, of course, ends up going to trial, and this is what happens when he goes to trial.
Trial accused of murdering a beloved retired officer. Tonight, it's his chance to prove he's not a killer. As we join you tonight, the trial for Stephan Cannon is transitioning.
The prosecution has wrapped. Now Cannon's team must prove he didn't kill David Dorn during a night of chaos in St. Louis. News 4's Caroline Hecker is in court for this widely watched trial.
And Caroline, jurors now have some insight from the only supposed witness to the killing.
Well, Sam, that witness is Mark Jackson. He is a friend of Stephan Cannon's, and he admitted to the jury today that the two were out that night to take part in the looting. He said they got to Lee's Pawn and Jewelry shortly after 2 a.m. and went inside the store through a front glass door that was broken. Then Jackson testified while he was inside trying to grab some TVs, he heard gunshots out front, and unsure of what it was, he hid. He said a few minutes later he heard a barrage of about another 10 shots, so he continued to hide until he heard Stephan Cannon call out for him, and the two jumped in his car and left. He testified to the jury that car ride home was silent, but he says the next day Cannon called him to see how he was doing, and he said Cannon made a comment that scared him. He said that Cannon said, quote, I didn't want to do I didn't want to have to do that to him, which Jackson then interpreted as a confession. Now, defense attorneys grilled Jackson on the stand after his story, once he was arrested, changed to police 5 times before he ultimately named Cannon as the shooter, a move the defense attorneys say he only did in order to cut a deal. We also, earlier this morning, heard from the medical examiner in this case who conducted the death investigation. He says the retired police captain was shot in the thigh, in the hand, and in the chest. He also testified that those wounds, in his professional opinion, did not look like they came from a high-velocity round, which is important because in the surveillance video, you see a man with a handgun and you see a man with a rifle. And we also heard today from a woman who was living in the apartment that Cannon was ultimately arrested and found at. She was given a series of still images from the surveillance video to look at back when this happened, and police say she picked out Stephan Cannon in just the second photo. And she picked him out, I should mention, wearing a white hat and a black tracksuit. That's important because prosecutors say the outdoor video shows the shooter in that same outfit. However, defense attorneys quick to argue that that white hat and that black tracksuit were never found at the apartment that police searched. Those defense attorneys kicking off with their first witness tomorrow morning at 9. We're live downtown tonight. Caroline Hecker, News 4.
We'll continue to follow this, Caroline. Thank you. The heat is on.
So that's how Mr. Cannon's trial played out. He got convicted, subsequently was sentenced to life without parole plus an additional 30 years on top of that because he was the trigger man. He was the trigger man. He was the one outside the pawn shop. He was the one who shot the retired police officer, David Dorn. And Mark Jackson, who was the young man who brought, Mr. Cannon down to the incident, he called them up and said, hey, let's go rob some stores. And he's the getaway driver. He was a getaway driver. It was his vehicle. He was his Pontiac G6 that was seen on camera. And he ended up testifying against Mr. Cannon. And he got a sweetheart deal. And, I don't know. I don't know if you put me in a position. If I call you up to go steal some stuff out of a store, we're going to rob some loot, whatever we're going to do, and you go up and you're outside and you decide to commit murder. And the person you happen to kill is a police officer, a retired police officer, who they're going to pursue. They're going to pursue this case relentlessly because it's one of their own, retired or not. Am I supposed to hold solid and just hope that I don't get convicted and end up like you, getting life without parole, getting ridiculous amount of years in prison, trying to keep it real? So In the end, Mark Jackson did not keep it real. He did not stay solid to a street code. He decided to testify against his boy, who he invited down to do the looting. This is how that played out.
Hours after a jury convicted a man of killing a retired police captain, prosecutors agreed to let the getaway driver walk out of jail. 5 on your side's Christine Byers was in court today, and she's here to explain how the second man involved in the death of David Dorn got a deal.
The city needs more citizens like Mark Jackson. That's what his defense attorney said in court just hours ago. He says Jackson stepped up and did the right thing to help convict Dorn's killer, even though it came at great personal risk to himself. Mark Jackson admits he was the getaway driver the night David Dorn was killed while trying to protect a pawn shop from looters. Jackson was charged with 7 crimes, including second-degree murder, within weeks of the June 2020 killing. He's been at the City Justice Center ever since. Tuesday, he took the stand as one of the state's key witnesses against the shooter, Stephan Cannon. He identified Cannon in surveillance images taken at the pawn shop that night. In exchange for that testimony, prosecutors dropped all but 2 of the charges, including the murder charge. Judge Teresa Counts-Burke then gave him a 5-year probation sentence for robbery and burglary. Should he violate that probation, she said she will send him to prison for 15 years. Dorn's widow, St. Louis Police Sergeant Ann Dorn, sent me a statement within the past hour. It read in part, "I'm in agreement with the deal made. Jackson did not pull the trigger, killing my beloved husband, David. In the end, he tried to do what was right. I think the sentence is fair and just. I hope he can take this as a sign and turn his life around."
So after snitching on his homeboy, and after getting a sweetheart deal that allowed him to walk out of jail with just robbery and burglary charges, and after hearing the judge tell him that if he violates the probation, he'll be sentenced to 15 years, Mark Jackson has found himself in trouble with the law again. While he was still on probation, he received 5 years of probation. This is only 2025, and he just got sentenced in 2022. So he still had probation left when the latest incident involving him occurred. Now, this incident occurred in 2024 on June 25th, 2024. And he's been since indicted by the federal government, Eastern District of Missouri in St. Louis for felon in possession of a firearm. So, like I said, after getting that sweetheart deal and after, getting the chance to get out of jail, get another chance at life. Because let's not forget, he was charged with murder for his involvement in that incident that resulted in the death of the retired police officer. So on June 25th, 2024, the defendant possessed a Glock 21 .45 caliber semi-automatic pistol while standing at a bus stall at a North Handley Metrolink station located in St. Louis County within the Eastern District of Missouri. That evening, officers with the St. Louis County Police Department monitoring the Metrolink station saw individuals smoking within the bus stall and approached to investigate. One of those officers observed the defendant was wearing a crossbody bag that rested on the left side of his body. As the officer got closer, the defendant turned his body so that the officer could no longer see the bag. While speaking with the defendant, the officer observed what he believed to be the grip of a firearm inside the open bag. The officer then detained the defendant, and a second officer located and seized the firearm from the bag. An expert firearm examiner with the St. Louis County Police Department Crime Lab determined that the Glock 21 was manufactured outside the state of Missouri, and therefore it had been transported across state lines and in interstate commerce prior to or during the defendant's possession. So this is his new reality. He's now sitting in federal custody right now, waiting his sentence. He gets sentenced in December. And, it's very clear that he did not learn from the incident that occurred earlier. As part of his plea agreement in this case, it says the parties further agree that the defendant committed the instant offense subsequent to sustaining one felony conviction of a crime of violence, specifically first-degree robbery in case 22 CR 1578. That is the case involving the officer, because like I said, he pled guilty to robbery and he pled guilty to burglary in connection with the incident that occurred at the pawn shop. So, after all this was said and done, after the judge in his state case admonished him and said that she would sentence him to prison for 15 years if he violated, ultimately, when he was found to be in custody for violating his state probation, instead of sentencing him to the 15 years in which he had hanging over his head for that previous case, she decided just this past summer to terminate his probation. So his probation is terminated. He didn't got to worry about none of those issues anymore. Only thing he got to do is go to federal prison right now and deal with his gun charge. I don't know if this is justice. I don't know if, she should have went ahead and sentenced him to prison to begin with, because clearly he didn't learn his lesson. If you are back on the street, let me just speak for myself. If I catch a murder charge and I'm really a participant in this crime, if you're committing a robbery, in the course of a robbery or burglary or whatever, somebody gets killed. A lot of people get this same charge. It's called felony murder. My co-defendant has got life without parole in prison, plus 30 years, and I get a chance to be on the street again. You're not going to catch me standing at a bus stop with a gun, smoking weed or whatever he was smoking, and get law enforcement interaction. And this is what happened to Mark Jackson. Clearly, he didn't learn his lesson. And this is after snitching on his homeboy. So, he gets to go to state prison right now, known as a snitch. Federal prison, known as a snitch. I don't know if people in the federal prison may even recognize who he is and the role he played in his previous case. But I think this is a very sad situation. He had the opportunity to turn his life around, and now he's facing up to 15 years now in prison for felon in possession of a firearm. St. Louis is notorious for charging people, especially black men, young black men, with these types of crimes. Very notorious for it. Mark Jackson isn't that old either. You got to keep in mind, he was only 22 at the time that all of these things occurred with the retired police officer. So here we are 5 years later. He's still in his 20s. So he's prime target. He's a prime target for prosecutors and the police in Missouri and St. Louis to send him to prison, because they like to take all of your 20s, all of your 30s, and probably get some of your 40s if they can, until you have what they call aged out of recidivism. Because, a lot of people like to talk a lot of trash about black people being 13% of the population and committing a significant percentage of the crime. One thing that they don't pay attention to, or even notice, or even care to even look into in this, in this whole equation, is that 13% of when you say 13% of the population, you're talking about 100% of black people. What they don't mention is that for the most part, crimes that are committed are mostly being committed by the same individuals, time after time after time. So, a lot of the crime basically are the same people getting in jail, getting out of jail, getting in jail, getting out of jail, subsequently committing more crimes. That is an overwhelming majority of the crime numbers. And that's the truth, especially serious crimes. If a person doesn't get caught committing a robbery, they'll go do another one. So you may see 100 robberies, connected to a particular town, a particular city. You could just about bet your bottom dollar that all of those robberies, or a majority of those robberies, will be connected to, a majority of the same people. This isn't 100 people committing 100 robberies. It's probably 20 people committing 100 robberies, or even less than that. That's just the way crime works. And once you understand criminology, you understand it, but the general public doesn't understand it. So, so Mark Jackson will be getting sentenced in December for his latest charge. His probation was terminated. He doesn't have to deal with a revocation for catching a new case while he was on probation. He gets to continue on with his life, go to prison for the feds, and get out and go from there. Tell me what you guys think. Do you guys think that he should have been sentenced as the shooter was in his original case? Should he have ended up in prison for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, just like the shooter was in the case involving the police officer? Because he wouldn't have been on the street right now to catch the firearms charge had he still been in jail for that earlier incident. Something to think about. Something to think about. Anyway, till next time, this is Mr. 100K a day. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. I like to give you guys updates on crimes and people and situations that occurred just to show you where they are now, how things turned out, show you how the system turns, people into recidivists. Sometimes you just can't break from the cycle. Tell me what you guys think in the comments. This is Mr. 100K a day. If you got any questions, comments, leave it below. Leave it in the comment section on this video. Till next time, I'll catch y'all later. Peace.